Hi everyone, I'm Rosemary, and today I have another high-end decor dollar dupe, this time featuring some beautiful pieces from H&M Home. Shout out to Cha-Cha for the suggestion. This is actually part 6 of the series, and in the previous videos, I did pieces from Anthropologie, Pottery Barn, West Elm, Magnolia, and Restoration Hardware. And I will link those here and in the description if you'd like to check those out. But for now, let's jump into the first project of this video, H&M's mirror with rattan frame, retailing for $34.99. For this project, I'm going to be using some of the Dollar Tree glow sticks. I'm going to be using both bracelets and necklaces, so I need 1 pack of each. I'll use 3 from each of the packets. And then I went ahead and just bent them around as if I was using them for glow sticks. And of course they will light up. You can't really see it here. But of course, as you know, that glow goes away probably in an hour or 2. And then what I want to do is take those 3 bracelets and use the connectors to connect the 3 together in a circle. Next, I took 2 of the necklaces, bent those around and formed those into a larger circle. And then with that 3rd necklace, I just connected it to itself to create 1 smaller circle. Then I took some masking tape and just reinforced around the connectors. And then to give my glow stick hoops a bit of a rattan finish, I went ahead with a hula skirt from the Dollar Tree and cut off the strands. And then I'm going to just wrap the hoops with the hula skirt. I want to keep saying hula hoop, but I want to wrap the glow stick hoops with the hula skirt strands. There we go. And then I'm just using some of my Titebond glue to adhere it. You can use any glue here. I'm just using that one because I will need it in other parts of this project. So I just figured I'd use that one. And then this is what they look like after I did wrap these 3 times. That is a little bit labor intensive, but I wanted to give it a nice finish. And then I just took some of this Territorial Beige craft paint and added a little water to it to create a stain for the hoops. And I'm going to be staining the largest hoop and the second to largest hoop. I'm not going to be staining that small hoop. I did put that one aside. And then once the stain was dry, I took the larger hoop and set that aside. And then with the smaller hoop, what I want to do is attach some more of the hula strands to this smaller hoop. And so what I did was I cut 6-inch strands of the hula skirt, and then I'm just folding it in half. And then what I did was add some dabs of glue there to the hoop. And I'm kind of just spacing the dabs of glue approximately 1 width of the hula skirt strand. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it. You can measure it if you want a more exact finish. And then once all the strands were attached, I took the smallest hoop, the one that I didn't stain, the one that was the 1 necklace joined together, and I placed that inside of the hoop with the strands glued to it. And so it fits really nicely right inside. And then when you flip it over, you can see that the strands actually come out now between the 2 hoops. And that's the way you want it for the next step. For the mirror, I'm going to be using this mirror from the Dollar Tree. Now, I did want to point out that this is the newer mirror that they now carry in the stores, and it is a little bit larger than the ones that they've had in the past. So just want to point that out. And then to glue the hoops to the mirror, I am going to be placing that part where I glued the strands to the hoops down, so that that's the part that touches the mirror. And then I'm using Titebond glue here, but you could also use E6000. What I like about the Titebond is that it does have a pretty good setup within 15 seconds. And so what I'm doing here is just kind of maneuvering it and positioning it to make sure that while it is in that setup phase, that it is kind of keeping the shape properly. And then once that piece was set, I took the larger hoop and placed it so that it was about 3 inches away from the center piece all the way around. Next, I took the strands, and where each strand was, I added again a dab of glue there to the top on the outer hoop. And you can see where I already did have some dabs of glue and had applied these sticks. These are the craft sticks that you get from the Dollar Tree. And I did get 2 packs of these. And then what I did was I did it backwards. And so I had to pull all of the little sticks off. And so that's why you see those little kind of marks there where I had to pull the glue off. You also see on the sticks themselves, they have some of the paint where it got pulled off of the hoop. So anyway, I'm just gluing the two pieces together with the sticks. And I kind of did it where I tried to do it on the hoop and then I did it on the stick. And either way, it's kind of, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, whichever way you want to do it. But just glue the two pieces together with the sticks. And then I just wanted to point out that as I was doing this, I was measuring to make sure that there was that 3-inch difference between the hoops. And then at that point, I did leave the whole piece in place overnight to make sure that I could get a nice strong bond so I could pick it up and do this with it, since I would have to handle it quite a bit in the next steps. And so next what I did was I took the strands that were at the bottom of each one of the sticks and wrapped it around and glued it there on the back to create that kind of crisscross rattan weave. And so what I'm doing with the hula skirt is wrapping it around, twisting it around so that it kind of creates a smaller or thinner strand. And then I'm going to just add a little bit of my glue and then again just crisscross the two pieces. I do kind of want to wrap it around the bottom of the pole so that the pole is sticking out a little bit, and then that can just get wrapped around to the back and glued to the back of the mirror. Also, I did remove the hanger from the original mirror. It just is on with a little screw, so I just unscrewed that screw, and then I'm going to attach it to the back of this mirror with some E6000 glue. And then to create that rattan weave again around the top hoop, I just took another strand of the hula skirt, twisted it around to create that thinner strand, and then crisscrossed it across the two pieces, the stick and the hoop, and just glued it there to the back. And then here you can see once the rattan weave has been applied to the outer loop. I also wanted to point out that the original does have a rattan hanger that can be made by joining two of the bracelets together and then wrapping it. I didn't want to use that one. I think it looks better without it, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the Dollar Tree hanger. And now here you can see the finished project next to the original. And as you can see, the Dollar Dupe is actually larger than the original. That's not typical. Usually we come in smaller, but this does come out larger by about a good 4 inches. So that's pretty good, and at quite a savings for just about $7. Up next is H&M's large bamboo plant pot, retailing for $24.99. For this project, I'm going to use this waste paper basket from the Dollar Tree as well as a roll of Dollar Tree masking tape. And so what I did was took the masking tape and cut it down to strips of about 15 inches. Then I'm going to apply the masking tape to the waste basket. And the first one's like the hardest one to do, but just kind of pull up the strip because you do want to try to get it without those little creases in it. Some creases aren't that big a deal since you'll see it kind of gets covered anyway. But if you can get it without the creases, that's even better. So what I'm going to do for the next strip though is I'm going to overlap the first one by a little bit. And this is what's going to create those kind of neutral strips that go in between the kind of colored strips on the planter. And again, just kind of pulling it and making sure that you can get it as smooth as possible. And then I'm going to just continue this process all the way down to the bottom of the planter. And on that last piece of tape, I'm going to let that overlap a little bit and then cut some little snips and then just fold the tape over onto the bottom of the container. And then I'll just do the same thing at the top, just cutting those little snips and kind of folding it over into the top of the container. Then I'll take that bottom piece of tape and kind of tuck it there underneath of the rim. Next, I took some craft paint in the color Toasted Marshmallow, And I did dilute that with a little bit of water. And you can use any paint that's a color that's similar to a bamboo or a wicker shade. And I'm just lightly coating that. I just want to create a nice base for the faux finish that I'll be doing next. To help create the strips, I'm going to be using some washi tape. So I have two here, one that I got from Michael's, the thicker one, and then this really thin one that they sell at Dollar Tree. And then once that base coat was dry, I went ahead and added my washi tape, and I just added the thinner pieces where I had thinner overlapping and the thicker pieces where I had thicker overlapping. And then in order to create that faux bamboo strip look, I'm going to use this craft paint in the color Warm Buff. I'm also going to be using a piece of thread to run that thread through the paint and then use the thread as kind of like a stamper to create those thin little lines in the strips. And this is the first of two paints that I'll be using, and I'll just continue to go through kind of stamping with the thread in between the lines of washi tape. And then the next color I'll be using is Territorial Beige, and I'll just repeat the process with this color, again just using the thread as a stamper and running the thread through the paint and just applying thin little strips of that color in between the washi tape to create that bamboo effect. And then once the paint is dry, I'll go ahead and remove the washi tape. And now you can reuse these strips to complete the faux finishing on the other side of the planter. Lastly, I'm just going to do a finish coat of Mod Podge to the top of the planter. And now here you can see the finished project next to the original. Now I think this one does need some tweaking, both in terms of color as well as the thickness of the rings, but otherwise I think it is a pretty good technique to get something very similar to the original and at a huge savings. For the next project, I'll be trying my hand at H&M's Tasseled rectangular cushion, retailing for $49.99. For this project, I'm going to be using two of the Dollar Tree bath mats. And shout out to Megan at Glue Guns and Roses, who I believe was the first YouTube crafter to bring us the Dollar Tree rug pillow. But in this version, what I'm going to be doing is cutting out that middle piece on both of the rugs. So I'm going to just start there and use that middle section as a guide and just take my scissors and cut right up along the side of that middle piece all the way through to the other end, and I'll do that on the other side as well. I'll do that for both rugs, and then I'll set that middle piece aside. Next, I'll take both ends on both rugs and flip them back to the shaggy side, and then apply some hot glue there to the middle. This is going to be the inside of the pillow, and this is what the outside of the pillow will look like when we get there. But first, I want to go back and go ahead and do the shaggy parts of the rug. I'm going to do that on both the top and the bottom and for both of the rugs. Next, I went back to the center pieces that I had put aside previously, and I'm just going to cut out this middle rectangle. And this is also, though, where I wish I had a DeLorean and a flux capacitor so I could build a time machine and go back in time so that I could cut this width down by about 1.5 inches. We'll see that in a minute. But what I'm doing here is actually removing some of the underneath of the rug where the two pieces butt together. And that's just giving me a nice smoother joint there between the two pieces. Then I went and took the other little pieces that were on the ends and cut those down as well. That gave me 4 pieces on the ends. and I'm going to just use those for the backs of the pillows. So from those center pieces, I got those 4 little pieces and the 2 wider pieces up top. Next, I'm going to join the 2 pillows together, again using hot glue. And this stuff, I don't know what the fiber is that makes up these Dollar Tree rugs, but hot glue literally fuses these 2 things together unbelievably. So you cannot separate the 2 after hot glue has been applied to these fibers. So I know this to be a fact, as a matter of fact, which we'll find out shortly. But in any event, right now, all I'm doing is just hot gluing the ends together, and they do have a nice finished edge. So that's given me a great, easy way to just create a nice finished edge on the pillow. I will leave that one side open, and so I can stuff it later on. But before I go ahead and do that, I am going to apply my way too wide middle pieces to the pillow, and again with some hot glue, which I wish I didn't do now because I didn't realize it was too wide until later. But in any event, I went ahead and applied this middle piece and did the hot glue there to the middle, along the edges, all the way around. And then once those shaggy bits were attached, it was time to stuff. And what I'm using here is actually from an old comforter. I made all of my daughter's dorm pillows, which was about 7 or 8 from that comforter, and I still have left over. And so that's what I'm using here to stuff this pillow. So definitely don't throw out any old comforters or pillows. You can always use them for projects like this in the future. And then simple and easy little hot glue there on the end to close it up. Next, it was time to make the tassels. And the tassels on the original are really thick. I think that's one of the neat features about it. It has a really thick band there at the top as well. And so to make the tassels, I'm going to use some of this yarn from the Dollar Tree. This is in the color crepe, which matches the rug really well. And what I want to do is cut one small little piece, and that is a 3-inch piece of cardboard that I've cut there out of a box. And then that piece just goes there along the top horizontally, and then I will wrap the ribbon, I'm sorry, not the ribbon, the yarn around the cardboard vertically. And because this is quite a thick tassel, I will wrap this yarn 100 times. And then once I have my 100 wraps, I'm going to just take that horizontal piece of yarn that I had put on there first and just tie that off at the top to hold the tassel together. And then once I have a nice knot there at the top, I'll just go ahead with some scissors and cut the bottom of the yarn to remove it from the cardboard. To make that thick band at the top, I'm going to take another piece of yarn and just wrap that around about 10 times before tying it off, just to create that nice thicker kind of band there at the top of the tassel. To attach the tassel to the pillow, I'm going to sew it on using that big honkin' needle. You know, that one that's in your needle box and you're saying, what will I use that for? Something like this. Something like this would be a good choice. So I'm just going to sew it on, and I'm just going through the material and then through the top of the tassel. Back and forth. I did maybe about 15 times, And then I'll just take it around the back and do some lock stitches to just hold that in place. Just bring the needle through the back and then the needle through the thread as well. And then I just went back and cut off that excess yarn at the top of the tassel, which originally held it together. And here you can also see the back of the pillow and how nice that looks with more texture, less shag. This is about the time that I realized that that piece was too wide. And here you can see what I mean next to the original. That middle piece should have been about 1.5 to 2 inches less wide. And I'm sitting there all week because this was the first project I did, and it's making me crazy. And I'm like, okay, should I jack with the pillow and, risk messing it up? Or should I just leave well enough alone? But of course, since I'm crazy obsessed, I did. And then here you can see take 2 of this project where I did try to lessen the width of that center piece. Not very well. It was a hot mess. I had to cut the glue out. I couldn't get the strip straight. Yes, not advisable. However, I do think it looks much better. I would just suggest to do it right the first time. For the last project, I'll be making these adorable boy and girl ceramic vases, retailing for $29.99 each. To make the girl vase, I'm going to be using these acrylic bowls from the party section of the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to just use some E6000 glue to glue the 2 pieces together. For the boy vase, I'm going to be using the small cylinder vase from Dollar Tree, and I'm also going to be using this Icebreakers Duo mint box for the base. Now, what I really like about this mint box is that it opens, right? So you can glue the other part to the bottom of the vase and then use that for a secret hiding place. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, if you don't have that type of container, you can use anything. The lid, even to the spackle container, would also make a great base. Next, I'm going to be painting the vases with a spackle paint mixture made of 1 part of chalk paint in the color plaster and 1 part of spackle, Dollar Tree spackle, and then I'll mix the 2 together and add a little water to make it nice and spreadable. And then I will paint both of the vases and the bases with this paint mixture, and I'll just do 1 coat. To make the face features, I'm going to use this air dry clay that I picked up at Dollar Tree in the craft section. I'm just going to be using a small amount. I'm going to roll it out into a kind of, log shape, and then just shape it around to create the lips. I'll just place that in place on the little girl first, ladies first, and then again another little log shape to create the bottom lip. You just kind of pinch those into place on the surface. And then I'll create another longer log, and now this one is going to create the eyebrow and nose features. And I'll just take a little teeny piece there to create the nose there at the bottom. Next, I took another small piece, rolled it out, and created that eyelid, and then another piece that was joined together to create a circle, and that's going to form the eye. And then I'll go ahead and form the same features on my boy vase, and then when that's complete, I'll set them both aside for the clay to dry. Once the clay is dry, I am going to move the pieces out of the way because they're not going to stick the way they are. So I need to glue those on. So I'm just using some E6000 glue. And what's nice is that it did leave a little outline where the features were. So I'm able to just put the glue in that space and then slide the features back into place so that they can be glued. And even if they break apart, it's fine. You can just, of course, it's going to be glued, so you can just glue the pieces back together. And then once the glue is dry, I'll go back with my spackle paint. And you do want to make sure that it is nice and thin so it can get in between all those little cracks and crevices of the features. And I'm going to go ahead with 2 more coats of the spackle paint. And so this is what it looks like after 2 more coats of the spackle paint, but it does need still a little more paint, and I decided I did want to switch over to spray paint to give it a finer finish. And I did start out with that satin ivory, but then I remembered this chalked paint, spray paint, gives a really nice finish, very similar to the original, so I switched over to that one. And now here you can see the finished project next to the original. And while the Dollar Dupe is not as refined as the original, it is still a really fun project to do. And don't forget, if you use the mint container as the base for the boy vase, you do get a bonus secret hiding place. And in case you're wondering, I did in fact zip tie the ends of my fake succulent, as well as tape down the little wispy curl on the front of the girl vase to make it look more like the original, because as I previously mentioned, I kind of get crazy obsessed. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this latest version of my Dollar Tree Dupes high-end decor series. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give a big thumbs up and let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. If you would like to check out the other videos in this series, I will post some here as well as in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.